and welcome back to this episode of the Chatterjack podcast with me, your host, Lindsay Gray. And today I'm joined by Dianne. Thanks for joining us, Dianne. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks for inviting me. So I'm Dianne Richardson. I'm Chief Exec of Britain's Energy Coast Business Cluster.
Thank you for coming in today. So I guess we'll start with, what does the CEO of Beck Business Cluster do?
So we say our mission is to create an environment for members to do business together, which sounds very posh, doesn't it? What we really do is make conversations to do business easy in whatever way we can. So I would say that's what breaks that down, really.
Nice. Okay. So then as CEO, every day, different days? Do you have a bit of a structure to your day? What does a typical day look like?
There definitely is not a typical day. So it can be anything from when we're running events.
Yeah.
You know, I'm out there early in the morning getting the banners up with Ellen, and we're getting, making sure everybody can get checked in and making sure the slides work and things like that. Last night I was at a fancy dinner in Manchester. A couple of months ago I was in Parliament with Nuclear Week in Parliament. Now that, I'm a Myra's lass. You do kind of take a moment and look at that amazing building and think, how did this happen?
Not by chance. I've got it written down.
Is that right? Not by chance?
Not by chance. I'm going to say there was a bit of there's been a bit of graft in there, Dianne. So, yeah.
Yeah. What is it they say? Success is around a bit of luck into going along with some hard work. Yeah. Okay, I'll take that.
Well, we'll start there then. So, seeing as you've opened that door for us, tell us about school and younger Dianne. Kind of what subjects was she into? What sort of things did you enjoy when you were a teenager?
So I was a very shy child. I know that people who know me now will be like, "Really, Dianne?" Yeah, I was. I was very, very shy. I can remember we moved when I was 7 onto a new estate, and everybody was new there. Everybody was in the same situation. And there was a group of kids playing outside, and literally my mum had to go out with me for me to go and approach those kids. Wow. So you can imagine that is really shy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Managed all right at school. It wasn't, that I fairly much enjoyed school. Loved history. Absolutely adored history. Still do now. Okay. So, I will listen to history podcasts, read historical books, things like that. So really enjoyed history. Quite enjoyed maths. I actually signed up to do double maths in A-level, and then turned up to the first lesson, and I can still distinctly remember this. I was the only girl in the class.
Oh, wow.
I hadn't really noticed. So I'm an only child, and my parents, they never made that thing of me being a girl or anything like that. And I didn't even really notice that I was the only girl in the class. But the teacher pointed it out.
Oh, wow.
And guess what I did? Dropped double maths. And it's funny, isn't it? I find myself sometimes even now thinking, as a person, you'll just make a chance remark, but sometimes that can initiate an action that can really affect things. So,
wow.
Yeah, adored history, liked economics as well.
Yeah. Okay.
I was going to go to university, and then I failed my A-levels. So
What
you're there
what
kind
were
of.
your A-levels in? What was it history that you were doing at A-level? Can you remember?
Do you know? I'm trying to remember now. I would have thought I would have taken history, and I was good at history, but there was stuff going on at home, and I think sometimes things just happen. And actually, when I look back now, I'm pleased they happened the way they did, even though on that day, when the results came in, it felt like a disaster.
Yeah.
You've got this path ahead of you, haven't you? You know what you're going to do. You're going to go to university. And all of a sudden, it's just gone and wiped out. And I then had to kind of go out and find a job, which I hadn't really prepped for or anything like that. So, but I think there is a piece about sometimes those really bad days, just thinking to yourself, in 10 years' time, this might feel like the right thing has happened.
Yeah.
Because actually, for me, what happened was I got a job in the civil service.
Yeah.
And that was brilliant for when I was bringing my family up, because the civil service was really good. They were ahead of their time. Mm-hmm. We had flexi time.
Yeah.
really worked in terms of childcare and all of that. So that was brilliant.
Yeah.
So I got a job, and actually it was a few jobs later where I realised that my degree wasn't past me, that actually I could go back and do that and go back into education.
Amazing.
So I did my degree in my 40s, and I did my master's as I was approaching 50.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud, actually, when you think I failed my A-levels, I got a distinction in both of those.
Amazing.
And I wouldn't have done if I'd done that when I was 19.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, because it was something about the experience you bring with you.
Yeah.
So I think for some people, actually doing that education piece works better later.
And that was at the University of Lancashire?
Yeah, so my degree was UCLan,
UCLan,
University of Central Lancashire,
Yeah.
and my master's, because that was in corporate social responsibility, that was
Yeah.
with Robert
Gordon
University.
Research.
I was out for a dinner last night, so
We'll let you off. It's all right.
All's done remotely, interestingly, as
All
well.
right. Okay. Okay.
So I didn't even go to the UCLan campus until I was graduating.
Okay.
So you don't meet the teachers or the other
Yeah.
students or things like that.
Got you.
But actually, it was great. Lakes College was kind of that conduit for me into all of that. So yeah, really enjoyed doing it, and I enjoyed it because I had the life experience behind me. And actually doing degree and masters, when you can really put it into practice straight away, that's something different, I think.
Yeah. Somebody else has been on the pod, and they said something quite similar. They've had a similar experience, and I've studied a sort of later in their career, and the impact they felt was that they actually perhaps wouldn't have done as well academically if they didn't have the life experience and career progression that they'd had. So that's really interesting that you kind of can articulate that as well. So was the plan originally, just skipping back to A-level time, was that plan always to kind of go to UCLan and do business administration? Was that always where your interest was?
I think, I'm trying to remember now, I think it was business I was going to study.
Okay.
I can't remember whether it was UCLan or one of the other
Yeah.
universities, but I was always interested in business studies. So my dad, I have a young dad. He was only very early 20s when I was born, and he'd left school. He was from a mining family. He'd gone down the mine, come back home and said, "I'm never ever going down there again." And he'd worked really hard. He'd done an open university degree.
Oh, wow.
And he ended up running the zip factory Optilon at Cleatamua.
Yeah.
So he'd worked his way up in his career. So he would often talk about business at home, and I could see what he was doing. So there was that interest. And it's interesting for me now with our kids and our grandkids, because my husband has a business and I'm running Beck BC. And so that talking about business is just part of normal life, if that makes sense.
Got you.
I think if you've got parents who don't really talk about business, it all looks a bit, what's that all about? It all looks a bit separate, doesn't it?
Yeah, I suppose that's a really good point, isn't it? If your parents are perhaps in the NHS or something, you'll have very different conversations around the dinner table.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so that interest was probably piqued by Dad, and that interest in business sort of studies, and then you kind of went off, did that piece of growing your kind of self and the kids and the family and everything like that, and then you went to university and studied the BA. So can you tell us a bit about what that involved, what kind of topics you covered, or things that you researched or learned about that then went on to make a bit of sense into bring your learning to life?
Yeah, so because I did it through Lakes College, it was kind of put together as a degree.
Okay.
So I set off. I'm trying to think now. I should have done my research, Lindsay. I should have. So it was built up. I did one course, and then I did the CMI level 5 course. That was like the second year of my degree.
And just
then
tell us
UCLan,
what CMI stands for.
Chartered Management Institute.
Thank you.
Which I'm actually still a member of, because you get like a student membership.
Brilliant.
And I've kept that up. And then at the top-up degree was UCLan by the distance learning. And it was really interesting, because I think one of the things for me, so when I worked in the civil service, after 14 years, we got the opportunity to take over a local cafe, local tea rooms.
Oh, wow.
So I left the civil service because I remember thinking at the time, I'm a big believer that you regret the things you don't do more than things you do. And I remember thinking, if I don't give this a go, I will regret it.
Yeah.
So I did 5 years self-employed running a tea rooms. It's the best personal development plan you can ever do, being self-employed, but you know that. And it brought me such a lot. Or it also brought me was the knowledge that I don't want to be self-employed, that doesn't suit me.
Interesting. Okay.
So within that experience, one of the things I really struggled to lead the team. I'd never had leadership training. I'd never had real experience of leading a team. And I was a disaster zone, quite honestly. I was.
Okay.
And then, you know, that little person in your head kept saying to me, well, you're dreadful at leading people and you'll never lead people. You'll always be dreadful at it. Because that's what that little person does, isn't it?
Yeah, they do,
Yeah. So I think when I did my degree, some of the bits that really, really interested me were the leadership and management pieces.
Okay.
And actually, in doing those, I think that started to change that voice. So that was it was a really important piece for me. And that alongside some of the experience at work and watching how people managed people. Yeah, that was a real step change for me.
Interesting. So it was not all of the other stuff we go through. It was the people part that was your biggest challenge at that point.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I often say to people that if you look at business, you tend to have people and you have process, don't you? And you've got to get the two to work together really, really well for your business and get them just right. And I'll always say to people, my natural inclination is to the people side of that. I'm not a process person.
Same.
I think we're very similar in that, aren't we? So it's interesting that of one experience, I was telling myself that I was dreadful at that. Whereas now, and it's hard, isn't it? Because we don't like boosting ourselves up, but I lead in a very different way to how I did then.
Yeah.
And actually, if that inner critic is telling you that you're bad at something, maybe what it should be telling you is you need to do a bit of learning around that area to improve yourself.
It's a great
But it's not what it says, is it?
No, that's not what it says. It kind of makes you feel all scared and a bit funny inside, and yeah. So that's some good advice, actually. Interesting. So, and I guess that people piece of then being CEO of Beck BC. So Beck BC is a membership organisation.
Yeah.
So that's all about people. So then kind of your steps following your BA, your MBA, you went on to different jobs. So you kind of handed in the towel at being self-employed, and then you went on to, and I've got this written down somewhere on here, you went on to do different roles in sort of the social value world, in the nuclear world. How did that come about?
So it was a slightly longer journey than that, actually, because I left we closed the tea rooms up, and I took on a temporary contract, a 12-month contract with the council.
Got you.
Smoke-free legislation. Remember when it became illegal to smoke inside?
I'm just old enough to remember some people smoking in pubs.
Yeah.
I do remember that. Yeah.
I remember coming home from pubs stinking of smoke.
Yeah.
But it was about going around businesses and getting them ready for that legislation. So you'll remember all those posters that appeared, do not smoke inside, all of that. So I think one of the things for me is I genuinely love business and I love businesses. And for me, they are all about people.
That's what company says in the dictionary. It's a group of people.
Yeah, exactly. So going around and talking to businesses and trying to help them to be ready for the legislation. And then obviously that was 12-month contract. And I think one of the asides of this is I've never been afraid to take on a temporary contract. So the civil service was a temporary contract for 12 months. I ended up there 14 years. The council was 12 months. I ended up there, I think, about 18 months. but I've always been willing to take that bit of risk.
Yeah.
So I went from there. Obviously, I went to Lakes College, which was when I realised that my chances of a degree were still there.
Yeah.
Nobody had ever said to me you could do a degree after 19. I'd never understood that. So I went to Lakes College and suddenly went, oh, hang on a minute. So they were brilliant. They supported me doing my degree there and then moving on to UCLan. And I did about 5 years, I think, at Lakes College, roughly.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just outgrow something, don't you? And I'd been looking for that change and completed my degree. And actually, just as I completed my degree, there was an advert for a job at UCLan where I'd studied. So I always say they were brilliant because they gave me my degree and then gave me a job.
There's not many people could say that, I don't think.
No. But that was actually Cumbria Growth Hub, which still exists now. So it's evolved on.
Yeah.
UCLan was one of the partners. And again, it was about going around businesses and supporting them to grow.
Got you.
And that was working with a lot of different partners as well. So you really had to be able to handle those relationship pieces. And just as an aside, I get a lot of people saying to me now about how confident I am talking in front of an audience of people. I didn't used to be. And I do still get a little bit nervous, but I never used to be. But it was when I was at UCLan, I had to step in to do a presentation last minute.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And when I did it, I got this amazing feedback afterwards.
Oh, wow.
And that voice in my head suddenly said, you can do presentations. You're quite good at this.
Yeah.
Because everybody had told me, you know, I got such good fits. But that was an aside, sorry.
And I suppose, in your younger self, like the really quiet, reserved Dianne, you'd have probably given yourself that rhetoric and that story.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, really enjoyed that time with UCLan. And it was that piece about supporting businesses. But again, it was a fixed term contract because it was to deliver a Cumbria Growth Hub period of time. So as that contract was coming towards its end, it was probably it was definitely the first time where I was thinking, right, this contract's coming to an end. I need to think about what I really want to do as opposed to what's available out there.
Okay.
So I think there's a piece, isn't there, about we all need a job to pay the bills.
Yeah. And
sometimes I think when I was younger, it was just about, right, I need to find something and it'd be really nice if it's something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
I think as I was coming to the end of that contract, and I don't know whether it was doing the degree, but I had a very definite, I want to really think about what job I have now. And I want it to bring me joy. I want it to be something where I feel I'm making a difference. And it was really funny because the Social Value Act had come out in 2012. This was about 2015, so it was filtering down.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, that's a really interesting space, because I had a lot of voluntary stuff in the background across all this career that, you know, I love my community, I love businesses, social value is all about all of that. So I literally did have the board that had written on it, social value, living where I live. It kind of needed to be nuclear, and I'd always swore I'd never work in nuclear. Always swore it. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because social value was the hook. That was what got me in. And I kind of said to a few people that I knew, contract's coming to an end. You know, I'm looking for something else. If you see something you think would suit me, would you just give me a shout?
Yeah.
And Emma Jane Goosh, who you know, she was in recruitment at the time.
Oh, of course.
And I can remember she rang me up and she said, I've seen this job and I really think it's the one for you. And it's social value manager on a contract, on a project at Sellafield, and this is the job spec. And then everything went silent. And she went, oh, God, I've got it wrong, haven't I? And I went, no, this is the job. This is it. I've got to get this job. Yeah. I've got to, you know, this really, this. So I did the application, put it in, got the interview. And I remember I went into the interview and I was interviewed by two people. Yeah. And it stopped feeling like an interview. and they said the same back to me as part of the feedback. It became a conversation and not an interview. So I came out of that and was lucky enough to get that job. So I was the first full-time social value person on a Sellafield project, which was really interesting because as that space became bigger and bigger, as other people started, they would reach out to me so I could give them my learning of, you know, where I've got to and things I've been doing, and these are the people you need to speak to, and this is the landscape. And it's been lovely to watch that build, you know, and be able to, even in a small way, help those people land a bit easier and be able to, you know, get going a bit quicker.
That makes total sense. So was that with, I think, was that with Balfour Beatty?
Balfour Beatty, yeah.
So
who remembers the Beck BC, which is great. Everything here links up, doesn't it?
It does. It absolutely does. It's like a big tree with loads of branches on it. So so you worked there for quite a while, and then you sort of moved into sort of social impact management, that sort of thing. Moved to a couple of different companies.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. Tell us the bits about why, and was it different challenges, opportunities? What came along that made you think, after landing that job of this is the one?
Yeah.
You moved. What happened?
Yeah. So still loved that job. Worked with some amazing people. Balfour Beatty genuinely did. Still in touch with some of them now, and you know that they were just really nice people to work with. And as a company, I felt very supported in Balfour Beatty. But what happened was the PPP contract. So for people that live locally, that they might understand what that is. But really, for me, it was an opportunity over a 15-year contract to deliver social value, and actually to deliver something meaningful. You need that time. Yeah. You really do need that time.
Longevity.
In order to. So it was that opportunity. And actually, I moved from Balfour Beatty into a company called KBR because they were on that contract.
Yeah. So you kind of moved into KBR with that longevity. So I guess I'm going to make an assumption. Would it be right to say that kind of having that longer term vision was something that you were really interested in, and because you could then see the impact things had, you know, you'd had your temporary roles before and they were always with a definite end in 24 months, 36 months, etc. That was a bit of a longer term piece for you to get your teeth into.
Yeah, and I think it was the understanding that actually, you know, if you think about social value and all the different aspects of it, if you think about individuals, so we have individuals in our community that are a long way from the job market, and actually they probably need support and investment for 8, 9, 10 years to get them closer to the job market.
Okay.
So if you're looking short term, you're never going to be able to get to the deeper, more entrenched stuff.
Yeah.
If you think about businesses, it takes time to build a business. You know, it's that social value piece of growing local businesses. It just needs that time. And it was really, I really believed in the PPP dream. I was really, you know, it didn't turn out to be for me.
Yeah.
But actually, because I'd been doing voluntary work, I saw another opportunity that got me to where I am today.
Got you. So that's quite interesting. And just to touch on social value for our listeners that perhaps aren't so clear and aren't so sure what that means, could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so social value is really about the difference that businesses make. So you do a set of accounts, and you'll do this for Natterjack, and you have a pounds and pence of how that company is achieved. But actually in doing that, you've employed people, you've worked with suppliers and customers, and it's that stuff that you can't really put into pounds and pence that businesses do. That is the social value. And you're always, I'll sometimes hear people saying, oh yeah, well look at the social value piece. You are always delivering social value whether you are planning it or not.
Yeah.
And if you're not planning it, the likelihood is you're delivering some negative rather than some positive.
Interesting.
So people think it's something you can do or not do. Any business is doing it every single day.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So I guess you mentioned a couple of things there that when we were chatting. So firstly, I'm going to go back to the interview piece. you said mentioned about interviews and all of the good things that come. I'm sure we both have had plenty and then have interviewed people as well. So I guess for our listeners, people perhaps going for the first ever interview, if you could give them some advice, what would that be?
So I would say take some time to really prepare yourself. Have a look at the criteria of the job. Yeah. Understand how you meet that criteria and have some stories ready to tell. And that doesn't mean make stories up. It means think about your experience, think about your life. If the criteria is, I don't know, that you have to have some communication skills, for example, that's one of the essential criteria. What have you done? So have you been part of a football team? You will have used communication skills as part of that team. Yeah. That'll tick off your communication and your teamwork. But if you just say, well, I'm part of a football team, that isn't going to embed in somebody's brain.
Got you. Yeah.
If you talk about, well, I'm in a football team and we were facing this, we were going into this match and we wanted to win the cup and we made sure that beforehand we all understood, you know, you've got to tell the story in a way because our brains react to stories. You know that.
Yeah. That's really good advice.
I think that was one thing that I really learned as I went through was have two or three experiences that you can tell as a story.
Yeah.
In order to be part of that interview, and always have a really good question at the end to ask them.
That is very solid advice. Yeah, I
so
love it when people.
The one I used, and actually I used it in that Balfour Beatty interview, was for you. What's the best thing and worst thing about working for Balfour Beatty?
Somebody asked me that the other day in an interview we were running.
Yeah.
They asked me what was my favourite thing about my job, and it stops you dead in your tracks. Actually, that one. It was but actually, it does tell you because I think going into an interview, you've got to remember you're also interviewing them. So if you get offered a job and it's not a job that you're going to enjoy, unless you really need the money, go and find something else because it is just it's too big a part of your life. You really need to enjoy it. So remember you're interviewing them as well. Yeah. So if they say my favourite part of the job is this and it's something that wouldn't bring you joy, and my least favourite part is this and that's something that you think, I couldn't live with that, you need to really think about it. Yeah, that's really good advice because I think you're right. We sometimes all do get swept in a dream of a title or a company or whatever. So yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you. And then I wrote down a bit about your volunteering background. So there's quite a list of organisations and businesses that you volunteered with, supported and given your time to. So I guess my first question is why? Are you not busy?
Just a little bit, yeah. And I mean, we had a relatively big family, so we've 4 kids, 11 grandchildren now. Yeah. So yeah, I tend to be busy. I suppose we've just always, now this is me and Jared, we've just always felt that you should contribute. That actually, I mean, if everybody gave a little bit of their time, imagine the difference that we could make to the society that we live in. Yeah. So really, I set off quite accidental. Kids were in playgroup. There has to be a playgroup committee. Yeah. All of a sudden, I'm on the committee thinking, how did this happen? And then the chair left, and all of a sudden, I'm chair of the committee, and how did this happen? But that was kind of the first experience, and I've had a really varied experience. But actually, so much of that has fed into my career as well. Okay. And if you're looking to build up your experience for a job, voluntary work it's such a valuable thing to do for you as well. Yeah. But actually, like I say, if we all do a bit of it, what a difference it could make.
It does make a massive difference, doesn't it? And even if it can be in different sectors as well. So I noted there that you've kind of done some voluntary work with the Centre for Leadership Performance. So that's an organisation that's quite well known in our local area and developing tomorrow's leaders, and right from a quite a young age, right the way through. So what was it about that organisation that stood out for you?
I think I've always... So I think one of the sad things about our society is that where you are born affects your chances in life. And I think especially having been born on Myris, I know that as well as that hard work, there has been an element of luck in getting to where, you know, my chances of being a CEO and living in a nice house and having a nice car were less because of where I was born. There's tons of research out there. If you're interested, you can have a look. So I think for me, I've always had this passion about how do we make that difference. And for me, a big part of it is education. The other part of it is connection.
Yeah.
So actually, if we can, from an early age, provide people with not just what their parents see at home and that, but actually they get contact with different businesses.
Yeah.
They can understand what kind of jobs they could have and really connect them into school for that education piece as well, then that will make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And everybody will be better off for it. So I think it was that piece. And I think what's interesting, because as you say, I've been on a number of different ones.
Yeah.
Every board is different.
Yeah.
And I've learnt something different in every board.
Yeah.
So the Beck BC board is different to the C4LP board is different to the, so I did the Copeland Community Fund as well.
Yeah.
All very different.
Yeah.
And you take something different away every time.
And you learn different parts of yourself as well. Is that
Yeah.
something that you've noticed?
Yeah. Yeah, I probably adapted to bring in different expertise and different experience into each one a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned about education and future generations, and we have quite a healthy debate on this podcast about, you know, schools, education, and what our young people that are potentially listening and what they've learned to date, and then the transition of being in full-time education into employment or further education and what that looks like. So I guess a couple of questions to unpick with you is if you could change 3 things. Go on, I'll give you 3. You can have 1 if you want. 1 would be great, but I'll let you have 3. If you could change 3 things about our education system tomorrow, you could wave a magic wand and it would all be fixed and sorted and implemented, what would they be?
I'd get it aligned to modern business.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen the TED Talk by Sir Ken, can't think of his surname, where he talks about education killing creativity. So our education system was set up when it was factories.
Yeah.
You know, after the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
and the business world looks so different now, but education's not been able to adapt enough. So there's a big piece about how the government sets the targets for education and what the outcomes of those targets are, because if you set targets and set budgets, actually you need to think about what outcomes you'll get from that.
Yeah.
So our schools get better funded if they get more people into university, regardless of whether university is the right choice for that child. So I can get quite passionate about we value academic learning above any other type of learning, and it isn't the only kind of learning. And actually, if Amazon can absolutely personalise our shopping experience, why can we not personalise education? You know, yeah, I could get on my high horse on that one.
I will let you, don't worry. I'm going to keep picking now, so I want to unravel that a bit. So I guess then for you, the apprenticeship versus university conversation will be quite. I think you've probably got you're on one side of the fence or the other. I would assume that, but
actually,
are you a person specific?
No, I'm person specific.
Okay.
So for some people, university is absolutely the right place to be. And actually, I think universities have done quite well in terms of like degree apprenticeships.
Yeah.
So that actually you get that real mix.
Yeah.
When I think about it, because I did my degree part-time and remote, and I was working at the same time, it was kind of a degree apprenticeship, even though it wasn't called that.
Yeah.
But it has to be about the learner at the centre of it. Are they an academic learner? Are they a hands-on learner? What do they ultimately want to do? And, you know, if you're an engineer, you need some hands-on, don't you? Unless you're design engineer, in which case you're always going to be kind of office-based. So depending on what they want to do as well. So I don't fall on one side of the fence or the other. I'm very much about look at the person, be person-centred.
You can tell you're into history because you can see the hindsight in it all, and yeah, I can tell everyone else has gone one side or the other. So I'll let you off. I like it. It. You've got a healthy debate for both, and I've said to Tom before, I can see both sides of the argument. Yeah. We have apprentices at Natterjack. We do have them. I went to university, so yeah. It's really, really an interesting one, and we'll link in that talk that you mentioned there. If we'll put it in the comments, Tom will add it in, so people can give that a watch and understand that if they wish to. So back to your point about Amazon, and they can personalise our shopping experience and education, but do people at 13, 14, 15 know what they want?
I didn't.
No.
I didn't figure out really what I wanted to do till I was in my 40s.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things is not for us not to put such pressure on them at that age to say, well, what do you want to do? Maybe the question is more, what do you want to do next?
Yes.
And actually they do need some kind of plan for the next few years when they come out of school, some idea of what they want to do. Mm-hmm. But I think somehow that conversation becomes, what do you want to be for the rest of your life?
Mm.
And it's not. I mean, if you look at me, a really varied career, and you're not stuck in one. You can pivot, you can move careers, and I'm not sure we really tell that to our teenagers.
I think you're absolutely right, and I remember feeling that pressure myself, and I was so confused. I have a degree in history and now have a marketing agency. Go figure. How that came about. How
many people do you know who do a job that is linked to their degree?
A handful.
Yeah.
A handful. So my best friend, she's a dietitian, so she studied dietetics at Leeds. One of my other girlfriends, she studied psychology at UCL, and now she's assistant professor at University College London. So they definitely are doing what they've studied. I don't. Some of my other girlfriends further afield, they've gone into teaching, but they knew that that's what they wanted to do, so they've always done that. I'm the anomaly, obviously.
Yeah. No, but I know tons of people where what they do is very different to their degree subject, but it doesn't matter, because what you're doing a degree is actually you show the level you can think at, and you learn all the kind of research skills. You learn how to. So I'll often say, like, we've got the BBC Awards coming up in November. We've just launched them. Yeah. And I'll often say to people, if you want to apply for the awards, address it as if you were doing a university submission. Look at your criteria. So it teaches you how to set out.
Don't leave it to the last minute.
Sorry?
Don't leave it to the last minute.
Yeah, don't leave it to the last minute, yeah. But you learn how to set a document out in a way that makes it easy for somebody to read it, to give you the points.
Yeah.
And that communication skill, I think. But like I say, it's about that thinking level when you do a degree.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And at 18, 19, 20, my thinking level now is completely different to what it was then. So I did all right at uni, but I think it would be very different if I studied it now. That's a really interesting point, actually. So, and then,
Are you going back to do a degree in marketing now?
Oh, no. No, I think I've probably learned more doing it. I think the industry that we work in, it moves at speed. And actually, I see some institutions, and they're quite old in what they're teaching. And like you said before about that modern business piece, that it needs pushed forward as well. So if I was going to study a subject, it probably wouldn't be marketing. I might do an MBA or something like that instead, but we'll see.
I often say when I retire, I'd like to do a degree just for the fun of doing it.
Yeah.
Because genuinely...
do history, it's the best.
Yeah, well, it would probably be history or psychology, I think, would be the two that keep coming. So maybe I'll do both, one after the other.
Oh, yeah, go for it. So then coming back to school and education and stuff like that, if you could tell young Dianne something, what would you tell her?
It would be back to that worst days. It might feel dreadful now, but it will work out in the end. Okay. I mean, you do have days, don't you? And I remember that with the A-level results, but it literally feels the ground's just fallen out from underneath you and you feel sick. And but it would definitely be, actually, things tend to happen for a reason. And if you look for the opportunities that have opened up as a result of what's happened, it can all work out.
Yeah, massively. So as you look back and reflect, what are you most proud of?
I think education-wise, that degree, actually, because that was, I love the masters as well, but the degree was telling that voice in my head, no, you're wrong, actually, you're wrong. And we had quite a bit that went on when I was doing the degree. I mean, I could have asked for an extension. I remember I lost my granddad when I was doing my degree. And I remember my tutor saying, do you need an extension? You know, obviously you could have it. And I'm like, no, 'cause my granddad would have said to me, just get it done, lass, just get it done.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, to go through all of that and not just get it, but get a distinction, just shut that voice up.
Yeah, yeah. So that's your proudest education moment. And then just throughout your career, is there anything that sticks out as particular highlights or things like that?
So I think, I mean, as an example, I think it's the difference that you can make to people's lives. So Gina's Bakes, who've just taken over the St. Bees Cafe. I met Gina. She actually interviewed for a dream placement with Balfour Beatty.
Wow.
So I remember interviewing her with the lady who'd interviewed me. Actually, we were interviewing Gina together. And we both said we could see something in Gina. So her exam results, there were people we interviewed that had better exam results. But there was something to her. And now I look at her and she's working for William King and she's running her own very, very successful business. And I hope that when I gave her that opportunity, it opened some of those doors for her to progress. Yeah. So that piece about how you make a difference to people's lives. And it's going back to that teacher who pointed out that I was the only girl in the class. Yeah. And then I look at the piece with Gina and other people. I mean, that's just a very good example. Yeah. I think you can open your mouth and actually it can completely change somebody's life, put them on a completely different path. So, yeah.
Yeah. So was your path change, that A-level thing, was that your
well, I probably failed it anyway, wouldn't I? So it doesn't matter.
That was perhaps your butterfly moment. If that's what's out there at the moment, that would have been your butterfly effect.
Yeah. I think it would have been. Yeah.
Amazing. So someone asked me. It was someone in the Natterjack office, so it's all right. What's next for Dianne?
Do you know, it's the first time I've been in a job where genuinely. So if you look at my career, I mean, you can look at my LinkedIn. I've moved and moved and moved and moved. I'm coming up for 4 years now in the Beck BC role, and I've no urge to move at all.
Okay.
It genuinely, I think it gives me that real mix of the good bits of being self-employed with the good bits of being employed that fit me perfectly. But beyond that, I genuinely love it. It brings me huge joy. So I think what's next is more Beck BC.
Okay.
Bigger, better, keep growing.
Nice. So I know you personally, and I know that Dianne is a big fan of building a personal brand. And you do this, your chosen platform is LinkedIn. Yeah. I said to you about doing a social media cleanse, and I seen the colour drain out of your face. I could not do that, Lindsay. Absolutely not. So about a personal brand, what is it? Is it happened by accident? For our younger generation of people listening, how do you go about doing that, and what does that mean in 2025?
I think for me it started off a little bit accidentally, if I'm honest, and probably when I came into nuclear. So I think one of the things when I came into nuclear was it was very male dominated. Yeah. And actually there's an advantage to that because I stood out in a room. So you might have met a lot of men and you'd think, is that Paul? Is that John? Is that... But actually you would remember the women because we were unusual. Yeah. So I think that almost started things off in terms of a personal brand for me, because you were slightly more noticeable. And then it was actually at a Beck BC event, would you believe, when I was, before I got involved, when I was just attending. And we were in this conversation, and I'm trying to remember, and it was actually a guy from KBR who came up with it. We were in this conversation and we were talking away, and I think I'd asked something about, you know, how I was viewed or something like that. I was always looking for that conversation with feedback and all the rest of it. And somebody said, "Oh, well, you're a social butterfly, aren't you?" And somebody else said, "Yeah, social butterfly who creates a hurricane." And I'm like, I am having that. So you see it on LinkedIn even now. Yeah. Because something about it just spoke to me straight away. So I get a lot of birthday gifts of butterflies, a lot of Christmas gifts of which is fine. But there is something about that, you know, becoming a butterfly and kind of becoming more comfortable in your own skin. And that really fed into my personal brand. So I think I don't think I've ever really sat down and thought about my personal brand, and I probably should have done. Yeah. That's probably one of the things I would tell myself as a younger person, is really think about your personal brand. But it seems to have evolved quite naturally for me, I think. Yeah. And it's things like, this might be a shocker, this isn't my natural hair colour.
No way.
You look at photos of any event that I'm at, you can probably pick me out because of the colour of the hair, you know, even if it's just heads or whatever.
Stephen Bartlett said he used to wear crazy hats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll often wear very bright colours.
Yeah.
So I'm not today, but, you know, I've got a green suit, I've got an orange suit, I've got bright dresses. Yeah. And that piece about being comfortable about standing out, you know, I think there's something in that as well.
Interesting. And I think it might be him that says about your invisible PR.
Yeah.
And what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah.
That is the power of what a personal brand is.
The most important thing about personal brand is how you make other people feel. So I would hope that a big piece of my personal brand is being helpful and supportive.
Yeah.
And bringing people together and connecting people. It's what I try to do. So I would hope that if somebody said, "Oh, what's that Dianne like?" that would be what they would talk about. And actually, beyond I've got a really nice sentence on LinkedIn, I stand out in a photograph because I've got bright hair. Yeah. Thank you to my hairdresser. Beyond all of that, actually, the how you make people feel is the biggest part of your personal brand.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Definitely agree. And it's something that's, you kind of never taught that either. We learn about that after GCSEs and A-levels and yeah, it's things.
I'm not sure some people learn it ever.
Well, no, perhaps not, but I was being polite. Yeah, so I guess looking back through your career, yeah, you've got to where you are. You've really settled, really happy in that role. What's next is more Beck BC-ing, if we can say that. So the future's looking bright.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure there'll be lots of people with questions that will end up coming in our comment section. But that concludes our episode of the Chatterjack podcast. Thanks again, Dianne, for being a brilliant guest and sharing everything with us. And we will see you again soon. Don't forget to give us a like, a share, or a comment. It helps us out more than you'll know. All right, we'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.